I am thrilled to bring on Tonya and Ian Fitzpatrick. They are contributors for DETOUR. They are actually, I believe, the future in media.
Hey,
yeah,
we're just happy to be here.
World Footprints. I mean, come on. It's just a natural connection. Talk to me about World Footprints and how you even, just the origin story of World Footprints.
Wow, how much time do we have?
I know, right.
The cliff note is, Ian and I are both lawyers. We met because of travel, because we both traveled, and I had to vet him, make sure he had a used passport before I even agreed to date him.
Wow. So the relationship was born in travel.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Okay.
And so World Footprints was born out of a frustration with the glass ceiling in the legal community. We're both lawyers as well. And after a little bit of life coaching, I discovered travel was a purpose or passion as our horses. Mm-hmm. And we opened a travel agency. We did a lot of media in the Washington, D.C. area. That led to an invitation to do a radio show at a top station here. We since went digital, and the rest is really history.
Wow.
But travel is very much a part of our DNA.
The travel's a big space, but you found like a very compelling niche inside of that. Can you talk to me about, the kinds of stories you focused on since its inception?
Well, we didn't come to the place by design. It was kind of trial and error, and where we finally landed is where I think we are as a social impact travel media organization or a social impact media organization. And that really is our DNA. It's about storytelling and placemaking, that those stories contribute to encouraging people to want to explore places, learn about the culture and history. And in some ways, I look at us as being developers of real estate. And that's kind of the other area when we talk about us as lawyers. That's an area where I spend a lot of my time and a big chunk of my practice. So what we're really doing with World Footprints in our storytelling is developing that space to really help shine a different light on the power of the history, the culture through the people, because most places really hinge on the stories that reflect the people of those places. And while the place is always the key character, we like to share those stories through what we do at World Footprints.
We started a travel agency with the goal of making sure people had immersive type experiences, so that they connected to the communities and really understood the transformative power of travel. And so,
wow. So talk about those early trips to that you would book, and what were you learning about your audience?
Well, so I actually used my own and our own network to contact people in whatever locations they were. For example, if it were Hawaii, I found different experiences for people to have in Hawaii that weren't available through a tour operator. And that's pretty much what we do. We're no longer selling travel, although we will be starting to curate small group trips with us for our followers to travel with us on a few places. But today the stories that we share and curate are stories that no one else is telling, and we specifically look for those stories that no one else is telling. One, because generally it involves history and not the history that we grew up learning about. But we go deep with our history, historical stories, and not to shame.
Can you give me an example, something that you're working on now or just finished up? Anything that excites you?
Oh, well, we just finished up a short podcast series on a place called God's Little Acre. And God's Little Acre is an African burial ground. It's the largest colonial African burial ground in the country. It's based in Newport, Rhode Island. And Newport, Rhode Island, if you've been, up north, east, where the Martha's Vineyard crowd hangs out.
The jazz is that the Jazz Festival?
Yes. Home of the Newport Jazz Festival. Yes, indeed.
And so, that community, very affluent, but there is a rich African heritage history and tons of stories that nobody is really talking about, except the markers, the stone markers in this burial ground. And so those are the types of stories that we like to share.
Well, there's a lot of credentials that surround, like, that you all have. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you're bringing all of, this intellectual capital into this space and the connections that go along with it. I mean, your husband-wife team, Michigan State, University of Michigan, can you just talk a little bit about the unity and how you have kind of built a company through, because I see on resumes and I get them mixed up, but there's London School of Economics, there's there's a lot of really blue chip, names on these resumes.
Well,
but
Ron,
yet you're in this small travel space. How does that work?
First and foremost, we are blessed, and we took the opportunity to get the education seriously, when it presented itself. And so I am grateful that I met my soulmate, because of the common bond of travel, but also to being from Michigan. And even though we, talked about our various backgrounds, but really those Midwestern values, and as Tonya will tell you, the fact that I had a used passport, but the reason why I had that used passport is because I had to take an international business class while I was at Michigan in the MBA program, and I needed to get a passport, and I didn't have one. And so I rushed to Chicago last minute about 3 days beforehand to get my passport, which sent me off to Amsterdam and France and the UK for about 2.5 weeks during spring break. That seminal moment is really what connected me to Tonya, because had I not had the courage to take that trip, I don't know if our paths would have met.
Wow.
They wouldn't have, and I'll tell you why. When I met Ian, I don't even remember how many years, but I lived abroad. I studied at the London School of Economics, and I tried my darndest to stay overseas. And so I extended my stay beyond university. And when you travel, when you live abroad, your perspective of the world changes. And so it was important that, he had traveled. And I knew from the age of 5 that travel would be important to me.
Well, how did you know that early? Can you talk?
Yeah. So I have an uncle, my Uncle Michael, and he was in the diplomatic services. And so he lived in England when I was a little girl, and he would come back for the summer with my aunt, who's a Brit. And I was just so fascinated. I mean, his visits showed me at the age of 5 that there was a world outside of my block. And I promised myself at the age of 5 that I was going to move to London one day. And I did,
Wow.
20 years later, and I ended up at university. And really, when I moved to England, I moved on a whim. I did a little bit of planning. I met someone a month before who allowed me to ship all my books and my clothes to her house. And but I had no real plan. And so when I got there, I applied to university to get a student visa and stay. So the LSC actually was a way for me to stay in the country longer.
Yeah, I heard that.
And I just so happened to get in, and I got a taste of it, and just tried to extend my stay in Europe, and was accepted into a PhD program in Switzerland. But that's a whole nother story.
Can you talk a little bit about how even building your company, worldfootprints.com, right,
Yes.
has just shaped not just your marriage, but your worldview?
Doing World Footprints, doing it with my wife, and having to essentially build a journalistic ethos for us when there really wasn't, because we're not trained journalists, although I studied journalism in high school in Baltimore and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I thank my two journalism teachers for really teaching me pretty much what storytelling, at least from a newspaper side, was all about in reporting. So I am very grateful to Gene Warfield and Brad Spencer.
A little shout out, huh?
For making me have this opportunity to tell stories in what we're doing. Our legal training is very much about fact finding and building stories and having theories of cases that you have to defend. And so that's kind of our backdoor way into journalism through our training and experiences. But what World Footprints has allowed us to do is to really get out of our comfort zone. And I think Tonya was a lot more out of her comfort zone than I was, because I didn't travel abroad until much later in my life. And it really wasn't until that Michigan experience that I had actually traveled to Europe. And so I had done Canada, I had been to Hawaii, but really never beyond North America. So World Footprints has really given us the courage to share stories and hopefully get people to build bridges. We've been to Russia, we've been to Israel, Turkey most recently.
Wow.
I can't imagine traveling to those places by myself. I don't think I would have had the courage to do that. And my wife has given me that courage and just the ease of just showing up and being okay with who you are. You don't need to know all of the languages. You don't need to know everything. You just show up and be yourself. And she is exhibit A for doing that and allowing us to bring that through World Footprints with a little bit of seasoning and coaching from me, but we do it as a love letter to our friends and our family and to others.
Humanity.
Yeah,
Humanity.
and I am so grateful that we have this platform and that it's accomplishing all the things that we've said and beyond.
And he, to Ian's credit and discredit sometimes, when we have our creative differences, and we do have them, he speaks to me like a football coach, and I'm just not having that. So.
Yeah, but I can't name it. I know there's a Bo Schembechler football coach from Michigan, but I can't name any state football coaches right off anyway.
Yeah,
I have to remind him I'm from Detroit,
and she does, believe me. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, you don't mess with those women from Detroit.
Amen.
So
Okay, good.
I know.
You figured that one out.
I say yes, dear. So.
Amen. But Ron, in all seriousness, what I feel we're doing, or certainly what I am doing, is my heart work. I love being a lawyer. I will always be a lawyer because I will never give up my bar exam that really almost killed me. But I'm living my purpose, and I'm doing my heart work, and it's in my heart to bring people together and to illuminate our common humanity and the things that make us similar. I always say you never go to war with somebody you break bread with. And that's the opportunity that travel gives you, to break bread with somebody who looks different from you.
Tonya and Ian, in all seriousness, central casting for DETOUR. From the moment we started to talk, I knew that I wanted your voice in DETOUR. So I'm honored and thrilled, and just look forward to continuing the relationship, amplifying the work of worldfootprints.com. Thank you.
And
thank you.
Thank you, Ron.